Welcome back to Mirror Modal Dev. Let's get going. We have been for the last 3 days working on some iteration of this tiny kanji learning app that I've been making for my daughter, who is 9 years old and currently living in Japan. And during the New Year's holidays, going through a few different things with me to learn some kanji, including using some workbooks, using Duolingo, and I also wanted just to build her a little flashcard application for us to just kind of practice with in our spare time. So we're iterating on that super low stakes, tiny little app that we're vibe coding. And one of the things we left off with, well, actually, before we get to that, just to remind you what we've been working on so far. When we started the streams about this app, we already had the game in place. So the game would let us go through, play a few, or just kind of like cycle through a number of different cards like this, learn the readings and the meanings of each kanji, and then decide if we need practice or not. The game has an algorithm baked into it that does some reinforcement. So if you need the practice, it'll come back. If you don't need the practice, you can get to what's considered mastery level for a given kanji, and then it won't come back as much, but occasionally it might. So that was all in place when we got started. So was the vast majority of the screen where we could track progress over time. This is just my localhost app, so we're not really tracking much progress here. But you can imagine if you were learning kanji, you can learn it at a pretty good clip. Last we checked, my daughter was up to well, at this point, she's well over half of the first grade kanji, which is this line right here, in just a little over a week, which I'm pretty happy about. So down here, you see that we have these filters that show the different kanji and their statuses for my game, my user. And then if we scroll all the way down, what we've been doing so far related to data was making sure that we could export data. So we can click this and get a JSON file. An example of that JSON file is over here in my VS Code. And this just gives us a data dump that we'll want to keep to just make sure that the existing user's gameplay data is safe. And the reason why is that everything in this app so far is just stored in local storage and indexed DB, which is all inside of the user's browser. So if you're playing the game on your computer, then your data is essentially trapped there. So we're trying to liberate that data if we can. And so the first step to that was making a data export. Another step before we get to the other side of it, which is to be able to import data somewhere else, is also just to be able to verify the status of certain kanji. So we started working on that yesterday. And the nice thing about this is it's sort of a twofold. On the user side, it's great because they can see examples of, when they first saw that kanji, when the date that they mastered it, a few other things that we probably don't really need in here. But overall, it's just nice to be able to click on some of these and see, because when we started the stream, you wouldn't be, this whole screen really wasn't interactive beyond just these filters. So that's where we left off. And one of the things is, since we are vibe coding this, kind of babysitting the bot is like a big job that a lot of times we have to use different tools, including, different files like I'm trying to think in Claude. I think it's like a claude.md. We're using OpenAI Codex or ChatGPT Codex. I'm not sure which brand they put it under, but the over here it's sitting inside of my VS Code and has access to do all of the coding agent things that they do. So yesterday we sent it on an adventure to implement this modal dialogue when it opens, and we kind of sat and thought about a little bit like what should go in there, and then made the request to the bot to go off and implement. What it ended up doing is one of those classic kind of things where an agent kind of, a lot of times they're going to have a bit of a center of gravity around certain let's say, patterns or certain decisions. A classic one I run into fairly frequently with another app, like an actual production app that I build, is sometimes when talking to a coding agent about different decisions inside of that app, especially related to asynchronous, like long working processes, the agents really love to suggest that you implement polling when oftentimes the better pattern is going to be using something like webhooks when they're available. So that's just one example, but I find a lot of times I'm having to remind a bot, don't suggest polling in this situation. I'll never say yes to that. And there, like, if we do use something like an agents.md, for example, or something like that, we can put those kind of instructions in there, which helps. Because the app that we're talking about on the stream is just this tiny little, just for fun, vibe coding thing. I haven't gone to that level yet. And yesterday, we were sort of like reminded why we do this and so what happened was that the bot kind of went through and it got this thing implemented, but under the hood, instead of using shadcn, which is what our application is actually using, it went in and instead just went down to the baseline radix components, which is by no means in the grand scheme of things a bad thing, but for a small application, really want to just try to keep things consistent if we can, so we're not chasing things down across a number of different implementations of UI components. So I went ahead and before I got started here, just wrote up a quick prompt to the bot. And I'll go ahead and enter this, and then once I answered it, I'll kind of read it back to you, since we'll surely be waiting on this to kind of fix itself. But what I'm going to ask the bot to do here is first, like, just remind it that we should strictly stick with shadcn instead of raw radix. So what it ended up doing, if I remember right, is this the one? No, it's not using this one. It was using it was using dialogue. Or did they call it modal? Or did they not let you do that in this? Here we go. Could also just look in the package.json, because that's where it added it. Yeah, React dialogue. Okay. So I don't, here we go. Okay. So this is React dialog, and this is what it comes back with. The end result is that these are going to be really similar anyways, with shadcn, I believe, being written on top of radix. But since we're using shadcn, I just want to keep things pretty simple. And so I'm asking it to go back and remove the work that it did related to the actual UI implementation. And so that, for example, one thing that we would expect to see is this radix UI React dialog disappear along with radix UI itself, because we didn't need that in the first place. We were already using shadcn, as you can tell from this components.json. So when you run, there's an initialize command or an init command that you run when you start using shadcn, and it'll create this components.json for you in that process. And because it doesn't install some sort of like named shadcn dependency directly, right? Right. I think that's one way that, like, a lot of times the coding agents will get tripped up on that, because it'll come in here and refer to your dependencies, notice that you don't have some sort of UI library installed as a dependency, and then just go ahead and try to install one. And that's actually not what we wanted here. So anyways, we're going to ask it to remove that UI implementation and instead use the shadcn version. So a lot of times on each one of these pages, yeah, here we go. So each one of the shadcn pages is going to have like an installation method. And so you end up running npx commands, again, because you don't have a shadcn sort of library installed directly here. You're going to run npx. and then just run this add XYZ, right? It might be a different component, but you run this add command. And then what that in turn does is ends up dumping it down into your components/UI directory. And the funny part of all of this is we're going to ask this thing to the bot to do all of this work. And the end result, file structure wise, is going to be that we're going to have this the dialog TSX right back where it came from. But instead of pulling it all from Radix, UI, React, whatever, we should have something that's pulled, like we're getting the shadcn flavor, which in turn will respect some of the things that we have noted here in the components.json when we initialized our usage of shadcn. So I don't know, things like the style, things like base color, and so on. So anyways, this is going to be a lot of shuffling things around for very little initial change, but it's just like a code sanity thing that I want to request. So it's going to work on installing or adding the shadcn dialog component, and then we'll end up replacing that usage, right? So using dialog and dialog content and so on. And again, that's here in the documentation that we can look and see, so their example here, I think was a login screen or an edit profile. Okay, fine. So this is edit profile, modal dialog, and you can see like this is, okay, this isn't exactly what they implemented above. Did they ever show the code for it? Code's right here, okay. So you can see here they implement all these different sort of subcomponents of the larger dialog component. Let's see here about this kind of conflict. Okay, so I checked components.json. You're on shadcn New York with Lucid and the standard components UI alias. So the right move is to use that, yes. One important conflict, shadcn dialog component depends on Radix React UI dialog under the hood. Right, but I don't know that do we need to install it? Oops. Okay. So right now your dialog.tsx is already the canonical file. Okay, so what this might be telling me is that it went through and instead of adding it as directly as shadcn, it kind of went under, it kind of did what that command would have done anyways. Let me see, what are the options here? Keep React dialog. Okay. So let's see here, we'll talk to it and say, okay, if you do end up leaving this in place, let's see what we can do to get the styles to better match the rest of the application in accordance with what we already have defined in components.json. Okay. We'll see what it comes back with. But either way, what I'm trying to do here is like just make sure that we have some level of consistency so that I'm not juggling a couple of different UI frameworks. What it seems to be saying is that, and this will be interesting, maybe we can just like try it off to the side. Because it's been a minute since I have directly installed one of these myself. So I want to let that take a test run or kind of run off to the side, and then we'll go off over here and play. Okay, so inside a temp, then we're going to just kind of, for funsies here, we'll do two things. let's remember what the initialization command is. Installation. Let's see if this will do this. This may not let us get away with it, but we'll try without having installed Next.js. Yep, so let's do this instead. Okay, so we'll do npx create next app at latest. The main what we're going to do here is just kind of I want to see what it ends up installing just for the dialog component alone. So what we'll do here is make a new app. We'll just call it temp app. Sure, we'll use the recommended defaults because we're going to delete this immediately. Give it some time to install everything. And then once this is done, I will initialize this shadcn instance for the application, and then we'll go in and just install the dialog real quick, just to make sure that what the agent is telling us is true. So let's cd into you. There we go. Anything is fine here. We just asked for the base color. So normally, if you're going to install this into a new Next.js app, this is what you would do anyways. And then we want to go to that dialog component. And install this, or add it, I suppose. Okay, and all of that was to just see what happens to our package.json in the process, so let's see. All right, yep, so it's right. It was, it does end up installing the Radix React dialog anyways. Interestingly enough, I don't see Radix UI in here. Okay. All right, but either way, I think that's enough to sort of verify what the bot was telling us. Okay, let's see what it's got done for us here in the meantime. Okay, so it's kind of sort of started to match like the styling, I guess. It looks like it just kind of changed the background a bit. So I'm not sure what our options are in this component. So I want to go back to the docs for a sec here. How much documentation does it give us versus maybe we do need to look at the base docs for this. Okay. So we can ask too. Show me where that fly-in animation is coming from when we open a card. Currently it's the card looks like it's coming from the top left of the screen when it animates in. Okay, so it says it's coming from the shadcn dialog content animation classes in dialog.tsx. On the dialog primitive.content, the class string includes blah, 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 blah. Okay. These two slide-in classes make it animate from the top left. If you want it to scale, okay, so let's see here, slide. Wow, we got a lot of a lot going on class-wise here, so, oops. Okay, so we can get rid of probably this one. Just having a look here, so data state open, slide in, data state open, 40%. Okay, just for fun, let's just try this without going to great lengths to verify and then see what it does. So okay, and clearly we have an on-close that we're going to have to tackle too, but what we just did is good enough for what we want to get done here. So let's see, I'm guessing, there we go. Here they are right here. Slide out these two. So we're going to remove these. And again, what we're trying to do is just remove that animation that makes it look like it's coming from the left or the right, because like that just doesn't make sense in the context of this app. Yeah, the animation is fine. At least we know where we can come back to if we want to add something different. Well, while we've primed the pump for this one, let's go ahead and do it. Let's see if we can get it to do this. Okay, so on open, actually let me do this too. I removed the relevant classes for open and close. On open, let's have it scale in from the middle with a pop. On close, just scaling out is fine. Let's see if it can handle that for us. So the idea being that we'll just get like maybe a slightly more entertaining open feel when the user clicks. And it's interesting, right? Because you can see when you click out of this, it briefly shows some other UI that says like kanji details that we never even see here. So I might try to track that down as well, but let's do one thing at a time. Load you. Let's see where that is in here. Kanji. See, it's not even written here. Odd, very odd. So let's try. Kanji details. So this one here with that title never displays as far as I can see. Let's have a look in the DOM real quick while it's open. Kanji details. Nope. Huh. That's super interesting. Okay, so got it. So you can see even like the UI goes by so fast it's hard to see when it's loading, or sorry, when it's closing. But even I can kind of catch it now. This is the state where there's no data, right? So if we were to scroll way up here somewhere, there's like we've got a ternary that is gonna show one thing if you've got data to show, and then the other is like this. So this is great because we can call this out directly. I noticed that when we close the modal dialog, we briefly see the no data loaded state of the component. Here's the code. We shouldn't be seeing this on close in any situation. And then pass this in. And we'll see what it says. If we can get rid of that, I think I'd be pretty happy to then just kind of like clean up the rest of like the inside of this card and call it a day. And then, you know, maybe for the next time we'll get into the data import side of the application. while that thing is thinking, I'm gonna write, let's see here. We'll make a quick temporary file inside of this directory and just call it dialog content. I don't think we're gonna write markdown, but we'll do it just to be safe. So inside of the dialog, when we've opened, again, we see like what the user had, like some data about what the user's done with this particular kanji so far. But it's not great, right? This was all sort of like generated by the bot yesterday in terms of just guessing what we might want to see. But just as an example, like the status versus the mastery sort of thing, like it's really exposing some like internal details that are only interesting to the game's algorithm. We don't need to bother the user with this. So I think what we're going to do is, let's do a couple of things. One, I had noted yesterday while we were considering what to do that if you load this, so this is the main game, right? We're in the main game. So before you check to see what the answer is, you just click this and then you click the card and then it gives you sort of this other state of the UI where it shows the kanji and then 2 basic readings of the kanji and then like the meaning, right? Again, for a 9-year-old learning, which is what this game is made for, this is exactly what she needs and no more. And I think this would be great we already have this code anyways, so we might ask the bot to go in and base the modal dialog on this code here, and then add some of those basic stats that we also want. So what we're gonna do in the prompt is, I'm just gonna grab these real quick. It's tough to grab, isn't it? There we go. Nope. Can do it. Let's do this. Let's grab it from the DOM. Okay. So we're gonna ask it to mimic something like this. Mimic the style of the open card in the main game view. Here's a rendered example. And then what we'll ask it to do after that is we'll come through, also show these stats only, and then I'll come through and sort of like list which stats that we want to show the user. For now, I want to come back because we were thinking in parallel while the bot was working, and I want to check its work here. So fix the close flash by decoupling dialog open state. So let's see what it got done for us here. Again, we were trying to get it to make sure that when we are in this progress screen and we open a dialog to see our progress on a particular kanji, that when we close it, we don't see that default no data state. And I see we're still seeing this. I want to do a hard refresh just to make sure. And then one other thing I'll do is we'll just kill the server and start over just to see if there's any chance that we have something cached somewhere. My bet is that it just didn't fix it. There we go. Okay, cool. So it does seem to have fixed it. Maybe we had something in the cache, like the next cache. That's always a possibility. So pausing it and rebuilding it was probably the right move. Okay, great. So we're good on that front in terms of the opening and closing. Now we're gonna, again, like try to address the content of this card and kind of be done for today. So I'm gonna open one of these here. Is there any one of these that looks particularly egregious? Let's just click around. Like, okay, so this is a great example of like why mastery and status don't matter to the user as two different things. They're just implementation details for the algorithm, the game. So I think what we'll do is ask it to take mastery out, and we'll call this thing kanji status. So this is where I want to get a bit more prescriptive about what this thing is doing. So in the modal dialog, mimic the style of the open card in the game window. Here's a rendered example. Also shows these stats only, or additionally show these stats only. We're gonna do, so let's see here. This first direction here, where we're copying, kind of mimicking this rendered component from the game, should knock this stuff out anyways. What I'm hoping to see is something that basically looks like something that's already in the game, and it won't sort of burden the user with own versus kun readings, which again, for the level of user that we're creating this little vibe coded app for, like this is jargon that I don't want to get in the way. So hopefully we'll see these go away, and if not, we'll get a little more insistent upon that. But we're going to say, instead of status, let's see, instead of status, show kanji status with the same badge, great. Remove mastery and its value from the UI. And then let's see here. We know we want to keep first seen and mastered. Let's have first seen and mastered. And then, okay, so for some of the math that is leading up to a calculation of whether or not something has been mastered or not, I just want to think about how meaningful some of these individual values will be. We have, and by meaningful, I mean meaningful to a young user who's just kind of excited to have, you know, mastered something inside of this little game. So there's how many correct, there's how many incorrect. Streak on its own is probably not a good label, because I think for young users these days, streaks mean something different. Usually it means how many times you've repeated something across multiple days, especially to a user like ours who is using Duolingo each day. So that's something we'll have to deal with. And then total reviews. So okay, mastery progress I'm gonna set aside for just a second, and then let's say okay, for the stats, for the basic stats, let's label accordingly. All right. I'm going to make this potentially worse before I make it better. Let's see. Although this might be fine. Current streak. You know what? We're going to go with that. And then for mastery progress, we don't need two different stats for this. In fact, this doesn't make a lot of sense as is. I'm going to look at the code on this one. Mastery progress. Nice. Okay. So this is how these are being counted. Success count over the mastery total. So mastery total in this case is this is a constant that we've set elsewhere. Is that going to show it to us here? That's cool if true. Yep. So we set it to 5. So that's why it's showing 5 out of 5. That means that the user mastered it because it got 5 right out of a total of 5 times needed to reach mastery. Again, that's set as a constant because it's a knob we could play with. Pretty low bar, quite honestly, but something that, just trying to keep things fun and quick. Consecutive success over learning mastery. Sorry. Let's see here. This little pop-up is hard to keep open. Where's the mastery one? Okay, so in other words, I think to be considered mastered, you would have to have, it's like the algorithm considers it like there's like a mix here of like, you need to have a baseline of this many times that you got it correct, but it also needs to be a baseline of this many times in a row that you got it correct. Which is probably a level of information I don't want to show off in the UI anyways. Is there something fun we can do with this? Given that this is kind of a mix, there's like a little bit of algorithmic special sauce here. I think I may keep this one out of the UI for now. Not because we wouldn't want it there, but because I think that's going to be if we were to actually implement that in a way, I'm starting to imagine a progress bar or something like that, but you're going to have weights and the ability to roll it forward or back depending on not only like how many you've gotten correct, but like if you break the streak, sure you have 5 correct, but now you're back to 0 out of 3 or whatever. Anyways, there's something fun there that could be played with, but I think for the scope of what we're trying to do right now, we don't need it, so we'll take it out. Where were we writing? All right, that temp file. Okay. Okay, mastery progress and values should be removed from the UI. Okay, so instead of passing this file in, I'm gonna pass it this way. Wait, let me just like try to do this to make it nice in the chat. All right, pass this in and we'll see what it does. The idea is hopefully by the end of this, we're seeing a significantly cleaned up UI. This is probably something just as is. There's that pesky flash again of the closing cards. We still haven't figured that out. On close, the no data state is still flashing during the UI update. Can we ensure that the data stays visible until the modal is fully closed? Yeah. Okay, that one we may not bother to chase down right now, but that's annoying. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So it ended up pretty much very nicely matching like exactly the layout in the main game here. And then it's showing the kanji status. which I think I'm gonna nitpick on that one just a second in just a moment. But correct answers, incorrect answers, current streak for total reviews. First seen was December 26th and it's not mastered yet. Oh, this is cool. So one thing I want to nitpick on was that label or the badge. Let's have the badge. Ah, this is why it didn't do that. Got it. Because it's not in this view. Sort of feels like a badge shouldn't need a label. Like, otherwise, why is it a badge? So instead of having kanji status, maybe we'll push this up to the top here, kind of like it shows on the main card. And then follow it up with like the open card stuff. And then down here would be all the stats. Let's ask for that. For kanji status, since the value is just a badge anyways, it doesn't feel like we need a label. Also, the placement is a little bit off. Instead of having it towards the bottom, let's put that badge at the very top and centered, kind of like we see in the closed version of the main game card. Then leave the rest of the UI as is. It looks great. All right, let's have a look and see if what we got. Ooh, that's exactly what we were hoping for. Like that. Now, there's some things that we could probably play around with here in the UI. A little bit, probably a little space between the stats. Oddly enough, this is like the one place in a large language model doesn't want to put a horizontal rule, which is kind of funny. So I could imagine potentially putting one there just to kind of separate. I don't want to like get into making this a whole table and whatnot. That might feel a little less friendly than I'm hoping for. But yeah, maybe just adding a horizontal rule will be enough to give it a bit of spacing between here's the kanji and then here's your stats. Let's do that. Let's put a horizontal rule between the basic kanji facts and then the user stats that are at the bottom of that modal. We'll see where that goes. Oops. Subtle, but excellent. Okay, so we're gonna go with this. This is actually something I'll probably end up pushing to the quote-unquote live version anyways. Before we do, I just want to see if we can chase this down before we get off the stream. If this doesn't work in a couple of passes, we might just like punt it to another day. I don't know if this is a racing condition thing or if it's a state management thing or what's going on, because we're not looking directly at the implementation, but there's something going on here. And one thing I have found, so just to give an example, like this kind of animation on hover is pretty easy to do, even for the bots, but like this kind of like shifting between views animation, I tended to find you end up battling the bot quite a bit, and this is something that we might spend some time like hand coding ourselves in a later date, but I haven't even put it in because you can imagine a world where really what you want to see is you click the card, it flips, and the buttons, maybe you're even inside the card, I don't know. But that's like been one of those things that's just like not particularly important to doing what we're trying to do here, which is help a 9-year-old learn some kanji. So so far we haven't done that. While we do this, I'm just gonna push that I know a few of these and see if we can push anything else into a state of mastery just to see some progress move in the chart. Like I said, in our actual production version with an actual user, I think she's up to a little, probably edging towards at this stage, like I think it was like 70% of first grade kanji being mastered, which has been quite a great and fun thing to get to witness over a period of, I don't know, this app has existed was sort of vibe coded into existence last week, but it's actually getting real world usage and it's serving its purpose, which is great. All right, so am I being fooled here, or did we solve the problem? Oh, it's still thinking. Um, but anyways, you can start to see the number go up even on my little test version. One other thing, let's see, while we wait, I think it's been a while since I showed the URL for this app. So I'll throw that up here real quick. Not that this, again, like this isn't meant for massive audience or a ton of people, learning Japanese through this application. It is built exactly for my daughter, vibe coded over a week just for some fun while we're trying to learn some kanji. But it is actually in production, so I'll give the URL in a second. Why in a second? Because I'm waiting on render to warm up the server. This is one of those things we use once a day, and for the audience of one, we just warm up the server. Oftentimes while we are just eating breakfast, and then that way when we're done we can run through some kanji real quick. But yeah, here we go. So the production version of it is such that it is at kanji-adventure.onrender.com. So you'll notice like this is again a different set of my own junk data. So like I'm not tracking progress for myself in this app, but you can see what we have here. I don't even have any mastery history on this one. So yeah, if you wanted to, you could play around with it as well and track history there. And then at some point, when we get to the point of this whole stream, you'll eventually be able to like port your data in and out of the game. But yeah, here on the production version, since we haven't pushed yet, you'll see like if I click these cards, they don't do anything. And that's what we've been sitting here building. Okay, so I want to go back and just let's see what we can we, yeah, it seems to be working now. That's what I thought a minute ago too. But I think it seems to be we're reliably like making sure that it's not showing that empty version of the card, which is what we wanted. So cool. That's today's stream. And again, we're kind of like slowly, in, I don't know, close to 45-minute chunks, just like going through and setting up something to where like this little vibe coded game that was storing all of its data in local storage or indexed to DB inside of the browser, we want to make that data portable. So we're kind of like slowly walking towards that. And what we've done so far is we made an export data where button that'll do a JSON dump, so that at least you can back up your data out of the game. We've also built this this little UI component that will show you on the individual kanji in your kanji list, like what are the stats for that kanji. And that way, one of the nice things about that is we should be able to verify before and after, once we've built the import component or the import workflow, that whatever we import, if we were to take this data and import it into say like an incognito window, would it actually match, yes or no? And so that's one of the things that we're going to want to kind of smoke test a little bit once we get to that point. But for today, that's it. Thanks for following along with Mere Modal Developer and just kind of playing around with me in this like little kanji vibe coded app. See you soon.